Mississippi. He's a little late this morning. We'll let that go.
I had to write a toddy letter.
Yeah, we'll let that go. We'll let that go. We'll let that go. He come creeping in like, just gotta.
Well, you know, it's 2026.
Still running on 2020.
I'm still running on 2025.
Pastor Hobbs, good morning, sir. How are you?
Good morning. I'm well.
Good. And we actually have a friend that, like I said, he's part of, we appreciate the City Councilor Ed Flynn in studio this morning to start off the new year. We thought it would be appropriate because there's a lot going on in the City Council. There's a lot that's going to be affecting the residents here in the city of Boston. And honestly, I'm troubled that there doesn't seem to be much of a solution other than asking folks who can least afford it to give more of their tax dollars to the coffers of the city council for the mayor and others to spend. And we're seeing an increase in spending in some areas, and a lot of it is around making sure that the mayor is comfortable and that she has her people around her, but that really isn't benefiting the taxpayers. Councilors, and you said recently, this recent vote on the council pretty much put a lock on the mayor having control. I mean, there was always this perception, Councilor Flynn, that the council had nothing to do after they voted on the budget. And this is just another example where people will say, yeah, see, look, the mayor runs we know Boston is a mayoral strong city, unlike a lot of cities and towns in Massachusetts where the mayor doesn't have as much power. But if I'm not mistaken, even when Mayor Wu was on the council, that was when they voted to make some changes, some modifications to give the council a little bit more authority. Can you explain to people what those changes were? Because it does seem like there was something done to give you guys a little bit more power, but people aren't using it.
Yeah, there was some structural change that was implemented that gave the city council more authority, especially as it relates to the budget. So the city council had the ability and does have the ability to advocate for certain maybe line items to go into a budget, recommend them anyway. Like I recommended $1 million to go into the Boston Police Crime Lab because we were not using state-of-the-art equipment to test sexual assault kits. So I was able to get $1 million into the budget, but it had to be, something had to be reallocated out of the budget to sustain that. But it does give the city council the authority to do that. The problem with it, though, is the majority of the city council are controlled by the mayor, and they just have the ability, if they have the 7 votes, they have the 9 votes or whatever, they have the ability just to shut it down. And you can advocate for things. I was lucky to get $1 million in there that was approved, but now I think 9 out of 10, 9 out of 13 are very close with the mayor, and will do whatever the mayor wants. So we had a debate. You brought it up before, Larry. The residents of Boston support an elected Boston School Committee. We haven't had a meeting on that in 2 years. And residents know what the Boston City Council has said. Well, it's more important for us to do ranked choice voting. I said, ranked choice voting, no one's asking for ranked choice voting. They're asking for an elected school committee.
They voted for that.
They voted for it. I said, let's do the school committee, and then if you want to go to ranked choice voting, let's do that. They said, no, ranked choice voting is more important. I said, no, it isn't. The residents already voted. They want an elected school committee. And during challenging times, when you're having these cuts at the school department and the school, the residents need a public body such as an elected school committee that can advocate for them and for their family. We don't have that. The city council failed in its responsibility over the last 2 years to even have a public meeting calling for a vote to have an elected school committee. We had the ability to do it, but we didn't want to take a vote because a lot of my city councilors did not want to be on record because they did not want to offend the mayor.
Right, and
It sounds like the Republican Party.
Yeah, can I answer the question that you brought earlier that Larry actually asked? What kind of training do they have when they first come into to understand what their job? They're supposed to represent the people, not rubber stamp the mayor's wishes. So, like, what kind of training? Like,
that's the training they have. They have sit down with the mayor and what does she want, and make sure that she gets it. It's
don't
just
have
like
guidelines
Dr. Bradley
like how
said,
the body
that is the
works.
guidelines. The guideline is to stay in line. The stay in line.
Okay.
Dr. Bradley just said.
Oh, like he said, is this the Republican Party?
What is different? I mean, people. I guess, Dr. Bradley, to your point, the irony is that people are complaining about this at the national level, that this type of behavior is taking place, and here
Right
it is,
here, yeah.
in full display. Like I said,
Well,
all politics are local.
Well,
Think globally, but act locally.
yeah, it's easier to criticize and blame Trump, and I don't like Trump, but it's easy to criticize Trump than it is to come to Boston and to critique the city government and what's going on in the city. When you critique city government, you get in trouble. When you criticize Donald Trump, people praise you.
Right. Well, the mayor, her whole inaugural speech, and I didn't listen to it, from what I heard, is that it was blaming Donald Trump for everything, and that now we're going to do better with constituent services. I don't understand the two. The two don't conflate, because Donald Trump is not raising taxes here in the city of Boston.
Right. Well, what you'll see the first day of our meeting on the city council, I bet you a lot of the resolutions or hearing orders will be focused on the federal government. And then, but we won't have discussions on critical issues such as the closing of schools, the school committee. They're more focused on the national issues, and they don't want to touch the difficult issues. They don't want to offend the mayor, and they don't want to offend their progressive base.
What about the people? Like, who
They could
they're
care
supposed to
less.
represent? Like,
offending
what's
them
our
is the problem.
recourse? What can we do?
Well, the recourse is in the ballot box,
That's
but
right.
but people don't exercise that. So this is what you end up, like they always say, you get the government you deserve. And to that point, now they'll be blaming, they shut down the Department of Education. The schools in Boston were already abysmal before the Department of Education got involved. This is not something that DC is doing. We haven't improved things. The state wasn't looking at receivership here.
We should have been in receivership several years ago.
Right. It's almost like if you send your child to Boston Public School, there should be a 51A filed against you for an abuse and neglect of a child, because that's really, for the most part, unless you're in one of the exam schools, is what's happening. Let's grab this call. Good morning, caller. Welcome to the round table. Caller, you there? I'm sorry.
Hello?
Yes, go ahead.
I was trying not to call in, but Ed mentioned my favorite subject, the Boston School Committee, elected school committee. And I feel like we definitely need elected school committee. I believe if we had elected
Not only
school
you need it, Priscilla, you voted
Voted
for it
already. Yes.
Exactly. And so, the fact that we voted for it and it was just, ignored, that needs to be taken up again, because this is a new election cycle. She's in here for 4 more years. So I don't know how you do it. But
Well, we can't do a recall vote, or like they do in California. Like, they lose confidence in the mayor, so they do that whole no confident vote or whatever. We can't do that here.
Well, the mayor had a clear path, when Josh Kraft, and some people think that was somewhat of a setup.
No, I think it was political theater now.
Because you see
Yeah,
also,
that was a joke.
to Priscilla's point with the school committee, but also I have to call out the hypocrisy of the big stink that the mayor was making, and basically with the whole thing in Everett with the soccer in the crafts, right? And yet all the things she was demanding of them with the studies and all of that, the same thing people were asking for over in White Stadium. So also, Council, if we're the shortage and asking taxpayers, why isn't the city withdrawing that money that they allocated? Because the other side doesn't have their money. Why are we not shutting down that project? That's $100 million, $100+ million right
plus,
there.
right? Yeah, and the community engagement, the interaction with the residents was very poor. There is no plan to address parking and traffic in and around the areas, and I don't want to see a private development come into a public park and take ownership of it. It's privatization of city services that taking away from BPS students. We all agree White Stadium needs to be fixed.
Yes.
We all support that. It should be fixed with taxpayer money. It should not be fixed through a privatization where Boston's public school kids have only the ability to play sports there a certain time. We don't need a fancy restaurant and a bar there.
Where the locals can't afford.
Yeah, and in the parking there, just to get into that area in and around Franklin Park, as we all know, it's difficult to get there for a track meet or a
How about the emergency vehicles? That
Emergency-
can't get,
yeah.
That's been a huge complaint
Yeah.
from people. The delayed the response time of being able to get down Columbus Ave. I know I was driving down there yesterday
Yeah.
to go to the funeral.
Yeah.
And the bus lane and then the one lane just going down Columbus Avenue. I'm like, this is dangerous for the traffic as well as for pedestrians.
Right. No, it's poorly designed. The streets are poorly designed. I see fire trucks, I see police trucks and ambulances waiting with their sirens on, trying to get out of the traffic. It's back-to-back traffic. I see it at Cambridge Street where Mass General Hospital is, coming towards, going from City Hall to Mass General Hospital. The ambulance is waiting in traffic. The person could be in the back having a heart attack, massive heart attack, and because of the way the street is redesigned, they're in traffic for 15 minutes.
And they're about to. So back to Priscilla's question: what can be done, Council? Because you already said, and I don't know if you heard Priscilla, you saying is that the council doesn't want to put this out on the floor about the elected school committee that the taxpayers voted on. That they want to still talk. They want to talk about ranked choice voting, which is not something that the residents in Boston prioritize. They already voted on it. What can people do to get this issue moved to the forefront?
Well, let me say that I believe City Councilor Mejia has done a very good job on this issue. She is trying her best on an elected school committee. I support her. I think we should make it a priority this term, probably this year actually, to have several discussions on an elected school committee and take a vote, go on record, and then it would go up to the mayor whether to sign or veto it. But for the city council not to do their job is only hurting the Boston Public School kids. This is already voted on by the residents of Boston, and if we're not acting on it, we're part of the problem, and we need to be part of the solution.
I agree. But I appreciate you, Ed. I appreciate you standing up and supporting Brian Worrell. Like I said, it's a shame and a disgrace what's going on here in Boston.
Well, Priscilla, I appreciate your commentary there because I think it was spot on. You're
Thank
breaking
you.
it.
I'm trying to send it to the Banner and some other places because people, I don't know what is going to make us wake up. First of all, she gets in there with no opponent, and it's not like she's been doing a good job in the last 4 years.
No.
Minister,
We didn't have no choice.
Minister Priscilla, I read your article and I thought it was excellent, and I talked to you on Monday. One thing that struck me, and I agree with you. I think you said it was one of the most disappointing days you had in many years watching that debate up at the city council. And I feel exactly the same way. It was my most disappointing day in 8 years on the city council. What was your response, Minister Priscilla?
Well, I was very upset about it because, especially after I found out that Weber and Sharon had went to Liz Britton's house that night. I mean, she wasn't even thinking about that. Being the council president, it's a bunch of politics, as T. Michael can say.
Yeah.
And if we and Bostonians don't wake up and smell the coffee, then it's on us.
Well, and Ben Weber is an attorney because he's handled cases for us in Maryland, so he should know better than most.
I get him,
Pepin, okay.
I'm sorry, Pepin, yeah.
Okay.
And the funny thing about it, if Sharon Hinton had won his seat, that would not have happened.
Well, that's why she didn't win.
Well, when you had Councilor Coletta and you had Councilor Worrell, and Councilor Coletta dropped out, right? Why wasn't it good enough that the next candidate, who is the most qualified candidate, who is a black man, why wasn't it good enough for the body to say, hey, this is the most qualified person now, let's move Brian forward? Why do we have to have another round of interviews?
That's not what the Queen wanted. That's the problem.
That's what I said. You need to know Queens.
I also noticed at the inaugural, Ruthie was the only person that she hugged. So what's that about? You know, it's a shame when the mayor got the city councilors in their pocket, because the city councilors are elected, not appointed.
Well,
and next year, this is the beginning of 2026. But next year is 2027, and there will be another election. And we, as the city of Boston, need to make some changes.
Well, sadly, that probably won't happen, Priscilla, because these problems that we're talking about were here when people went to the ballot box, and then they knew that this was the problem with the not being a separation between the mayor and the councilors, and yet they voted. I think the only person we had a new councilor was Reverend Culpepper, because there was a vacancy.
That's probably because it was an open seat.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Other than that, everyone else sailed right there.
Yeah, and just as an example, Henry Santana wasn't able to get his signatures without the mayor. I think everyone acknowledges that. He needed.
But he can run. He can be a representative. He can't even get signatures, but he's going to be a good.
Yeah, and then the mayor's team put him over the finish line, and of course he's going to vote for whoever the mayor tells him to. But I also think, and I said this at the beginning, I think the black community has to have a serious conversation with itself, led by the black community, not by white progressives, about where does the black community go from here after observing the terrible injustice that took place at the City Council Ionella Chamber on Monday. Where does the black community go from here? Do they just move on and accept what happened, or do they talk about it and come up with a plan? That's my challenge to the black community. But if you just ignore it and forget about it, I'll guarantee you this same stuff will happen again in 2 years from now.
I guarantee you. I can always say here, cut this good, Doctor.
I
Pretty
appreciate.
soon, it looks like pretty soon there ain't gonna be no black community in Boston, because everybody's being gentrified out of here.
Yeah.
But,
Good, Doctor.
I'm very.
No, that's
Hold up,
yes.
Good, Doctor.
hold up. Let me say this. You're assuming that the black community is aware of it. All right, and you're assuming that the black community cares about it, and you're assuming that the black community will come out and vote against this. That's where we're wrong. That's the problem. If we had a very vibrant, active voting community, this would have never happened. So I think what we need to do here is constantly, because we have a way. Before I say this, we have a way of actually losing our memory when it comes down to persuasive people coming in our community, asking us to vote for them. We have to note this and make it very clear that the people that are in office today are not representing the community, they're representing the mayor. Now that's one hit. My next hit is that it's appalling, and it's a shame in a democracy, which I think Boston government is still operating under that principle.
It's the cradle, supposedly, of democracy,
but
right?
Where I'm going here is that when you have a person, one individual, who's actually running for office unopposed, then this is what you get. You get loyalty to that person, not loyalty to the community that actually voting for you. So we need to actually become active in voting. This is why you need to vote, because a lot of our people died, all right, for this right to do it. And if voting didn't matter, why would they kill you? Why would they actually do all these poll taxes and all these things that they did in history to prevent you from doing it?
Yep.
Okay, if it didn't matter. So we need to re-educate ourselves on the importance of it, all right? And we also need to demand And I'm saying demand that we put civics back in school so we know exactly what's going on in our government.
Amen on that one.
All right, and then we can deal with this issue.
I agree.
Priscilla, stand by. You want to bring in our other guest, Senator Nick Collins is on the line. Senator, I hope you've been listening. You know, we've been talking about, you know, what's going on here in the city, but also I know you're doing something, and City Council Ed Flynn is in studio here with us. He's talking about what you're trying to do on the Senate floor here at the State House as it relates to these taxes. I appreciate you sending over saying, you know, people need to file for the abatements, but it seems like when you do that, you get attacked by the city. They want to come after you with a hire to try to discourage others from filing an abatement. But I want you to weigh in on this, sir.
Yeah, no, I thought what happened at the city council was a travesty to speak. I thought Brian Well would have been a great president, and just the way that went down was very disheartening to a lot of people, myself included. But I think the response from the public has been strong, and I think they see it for what it is, and I think he's going to continue to have a major impact on city issues, and you know, I think the community's rallying around him, which is good to see. But you know, today is the 250th anniversary of the publication of Common Sense by Thomas Paine. People were wondering what to do. There was a couple of skirmishes in 1775 trying to push back against the British Crown, and people were a little bit weary, a little bit tired through the wintertime. And today's significance is that it put into print, the media, as you all are doing, to inform the public about what was at stake. And so I think a bit of an awakening is happening with respect to that. The city council presidency fight. You know, we ask ourselves, what are we getting out of giving somebody probably $150 million out of the school budget to privatize White Stadium? What are we getting out of that? We know we're not getting better bus service, which is what I called for at the MBTA board meeting several months ago. While we get a major commitment coming out of the Everett Soccer Stadium for Boston to the MBTA. We get zero right now as it stands. The Route 16 bus, the folks who take the Route 16 bus can continue to get the service they are delivered instead of improved service. Because why? Because a private shuttle is going to pick soccer fans up at JFK Station and bypass the MBTA riders. What are we getting out of that? And those are the types of questions that we're going to ask ourselves. Just like this taxes increase. What are people getting out of that? You know, we have bank rating agencies that tell us stop stockpiling taxpayer dollars, stop raising taxes on taxpayers and stockpiling the money. We have a surplus of what they call free cash. I don't know who came up with that title, but it's called free cash, where the city is gaining interest off of taxpayer dollars that are being stockpiled. $552 million.
Wow.
They put $110 million last year towards affordable housing construction for future residents who still don't live here yet because it hasn't been done. I think we should be using some of those funds for relief for the taxpayers, and some of the bills that we have before us we're voting on in the Senate speak to that. They're common sense tax relief proposals for small businesses, for property owners, for seniors. And I think, you know, one thing that I wish we would do more of in the city is not pursue these zero-sum fights where it's someone's going to lose for someone not to lose so much. As I put in my op-ed to the Dorchester Reporter, there's been a zero-sum approach on this tax issue so far from the city that says you lose so you can lose a little bit less. It's just insane. Every penny of the increase gets passed on to the consumer, no matter where it's going. And so these proposals are really important into the abatement issue. Here's something that I think will shock people, at least to a certain degree. But because it happened last year, maybe it's not so shocking. Dorchester, Roxbury, Mattapan went up 10% in their valuations. People didn't money in their home, they still get a 10% increase in the value, which jacks up their tax bill unnecessarily. Actually, Mattapan was 12%. That was the highest in the city. And while the city's telling people, oh, there's an average increase of 2%, that's not true. Look at your tax bill. And what we saw at the end of the year, it was published. Actually, the sale happened in November. A mansion in the Back Bay was sold for $21 million. And while I called for the data to be released by the city on valuations so people knew exactly what the tax impacts were going to be, and they hit it till New Year's Eve. What came out New Year's Eve, that mansion that sold in November for $21 million was undervalued for the tax purposes, a tax break at $12.5 million.
Wow.
That's insane. We see middle-class families struggling to, make their budgets, and they're getting their valuations and thus their tax bills unilaterally, by the way, no vote, jacked up. And so the abatement form that I shared, Larry, that I hope you share online, is really important. And you're right, the city, does try to intimidate property owners from not pursuing it. And it's interesting because, it's a fundamental right, and it's so subjective. And it's not like they even come out of the house come out of the office to see your property, to see what condition it's in. They do some Google search online. It's totally outrageous. But a proposal we have before us in the Senate coming up this week would extend the deadline. Right now it's February 1st, or the first business day after, that people can file for their abatements. And we want to give people more time, not less than 30 days to absorb what just happened, what the city just did to them.
But also,
and
Senator,
what they do about it.
Senator,
to lower their tax rate.
Right. But Senator, I think a lot of people aren't even aware.
Policy is that
a lot of people aren't even aware that you can file an abatement.
Pardon me.
Right. I'm saying a lot of people, Senator, let me interrupt you for a second. A lot of people aren't even aware of the practice that you can file an abatement, and the city doesn't publicize that. They don't tell people that there is relief that you can at least apply for, to offset this.
No.
They want
they
people
don't
to
want
think there's
anybody to
nothing.
do it.
That's right. There's nothing that you can do. And I'm like, why aren't you informing people of this right to an abatement? You feel like you just have to take it on the chin.
No, and they expect that people are just going to put their head down and go to work and do their thing, and it's going to bypass them. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, the wealthy who had these valuation drops that helped basically a tax cut for them. Yeah. They have their lawyers on retainer and their accountants, wage a battle. But I think what you've seen is this class action lawsuit from the commercial property owners, because it happened to them, and I'm willing to bet that there's going to be a residential class action lawsuit. And it happened in the late 70s, early 80s. And there's a Supreme Judicial Court decision that backed the taxpayer for overvaluation, and what it led to was the city had to end up passing legislation to float bonds to pay everybody back.
Yeah, and they should. And to Councilor Flynn's, he was saying about what the black community, I think one of the things that would be helpful is some type of capital campaign for this broadcast, for this radio station, right? Because this is where for a lot of folks come to have this on every day, to have these conversations, not just on Saturday morning, but every morning in our community. That's what's missing here, and that is by design. The city of Boston actually could give up their time. Right, they have 8 hours plus on this broadcast that I don't know what they use for, but I think it's just to keep other people from having a conversation about these issues, right? And that would be helpful, but they don't want to give up that time because they don't want this to be discussed. So, Senator, what is going on at the State House other than what you talked about that could help move the needle for people? Because there seems to be a lot of moving parts down there, but a lot of folks are not plugged into.
Sure. There are a couple things. First, I do think people should apply for an abatement if they've had their value increased, because the city assessors will not, you can't guarantee that the people who overvalued your property are going to say, yes, you're right, we're wrong. But what happens is the second step is the state appellate tax board, that is an independent body that gives the fair shake to the taxpayers, because they didn't make this decision of overvaluation. It typically doesn't really happen that often outside of Boston. It happens, outside the city, you're not seeing their assessing departments jack up valuations on people. It's just it's outside the norm, but it happens in Boston, and it's happening lately quite a bit. And so the legislative proposals would be to increase the senior property tax exemption, including the amount and the income threshold for personal property tax exemption as well. So you see the increased benefits in addition to anybody receiving a sort of a dramatic increase of over 10%, which is quite a few, would have them those bills, those increases mitigated automatically. This would be tapping the surplus fund.
Mm-hmm.
And my proposal calls for issuing rebates to every property tax paying property owner to mitigate their tax increase. A couple of years ago that happened at the state level when we drew in a certain amount of money past what the I wouldn't call it a legal limit, but it was a threshold that was set in the 80s. Anytime the state brings in more revenue than that the people get their get a rebate back.
Yeah. But so, Councilor Flynn, you're seeing what I'm sure you must be hearing from the seniors in your district, right? I mean, this has got to affect, because South Boston has already been one of the higher price assessed values of property in the city, even before some of these other neighborhoods are now, coming in line with those. Because as Senator Collins mentioned, Mattapan was not an area where property value was exclusively high, but now the city sees an opportunity to cash in on the increased values across the city, and now they're tapping everyone. Are you hearing from your constituents about this tax?
I am. It's a major challenge, a major problem in my neighborhood of South Boston, but in the South End as well. In other areas in Dorchester and Roxbury, and the values of the house are skyrocketing, and a lot of these people are on fixed income. The retirees, they can barely make their payments now. They can't pay their taxes. They can't open up a Campbell's soup and cook soup and bread. And they're forcing a lot of people that worked hard for the city of Boston for 20, 30, 40 years, that gave their life when Boston was struggling. And now here they are at an older age, and they're not living with dignity. And the tax situation in Boston is really, it's a major problem. But we have to get back to fiscal discipline in the city, fiscal responsibility, transparency, accountability. There's, believe it or not, there's talk from city officials, elected officials, that want to abolish Proposition 2.5.
Right. No oversight, right.
Yeah, no oversight. And they feel like they should be able to increase property taxes higher than the 2.5% allowed under law. My colleagues on the city council support that.
I'm sure, because they can increase their pay raise. It's automatically rolled in, right? They got a $5,000 pay raise this year, so whatever they have to absorb there, that works out well for them. I think before we grab this call, I think it really needs to be highlighted here this morning, Dr. Bradley Rhodes, is that we have City Councilor Ed Flynn, who represents primarily Dorchester, Mattapan, I mean South Boston, Dorchester area, right?
Yeah, and South End and Chinatown.
And Senator Collins, who represents a part of Mattapan, but mainly the Seaport, South Boston, right? That are trying to help the communities of color. And where are our representatives that look like this community on a Saturday morning, talking to the people about what ails them? I mean, folks, this is why we need to wake up. This is why I tell folks, all your skin folks ain't your kin folks, and we need to be looking at who is doing the work on our behalf and stop looking at what someone looks like, because this is a perfect example of what's going on here and why we're not moving ahead is because we get caught up with this infighting and not looking at electing people to do the job. That's my commentary for this morning. Whoever doesn't like it, I could care less. Good morning, caller. Welcome to the round table.
Happy New Year to you, Larry. This is Cliff.
Good morning, Cliff.
How you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. Well, I'm not sure to say I'm good. I'm probably better than most, but this is very troubling that we continue to talk about this, and yet the folks who are infected by it more than the rest are sitting back, just taking it on the chin. So go ahead, Cliff. You have the floor.
Yeah. What about the What about the people who are struggling in the city? Like myself. I mean, my rent has gone up since my landlord has been. She said that she wanted to pay more on my rent, which is, I had a problem with that. But what about people who live in the city for 30, 40, almost their whole entire life that can't pay rent or can't pay their mortgage and trying to find a solution? We're bleeding here. We're hurting, and nobody's listening to us. We elect these so-called officials, and we need help. We need a lifeline. We're struggling, and myself included. I'm like trying to find a second job just to pay my mortgage.
To still not
pay
get
my
your
rent.
So I'll let Senator Collins take it first, and then I'll let City Councilor Flynn, because this is what we're telling people what they're experiencing. I know they get it, but the other folks down there, they have the majority who get it but don't care because they can take care of themselves by increasing their pay. Senator Collins, you have an answer for our caller?
Yes. So first of all, you can take our number down, and we can try to assist about your personal situation on Monday, 617-722-1150. We have a couple of programs, including the rental assistance program that we help constituents with that find themselves in the same situation. But to your point about what are we doing sustainably across the board, what we have to do is, and we see this at the city level. I know, Larry spoke about the budget. If we're increasing the budget $1 billion, what are people getting out of that? Are they getting rental assistance? Are they getting, aside from bike lanes, are they getting any quality of life improvements? And that's critical, because that's a lot of money. I mean, we're borrowing, we're increasing debt service payments $100 million a year, which is outrageous.
Yeah.
And what are we getting out of that?
Yeah.
But so we do have some programs at the state level. There are some programs at the city level as well for rental assistance. I can leave that to Councilor Flynn. The Office of Housing does a good job. But I think, we did see some decent news about rents tapering down, not significantly, but a little bit. So that escalation should be, stopping. But, I think if everything has an impact on the cost of living. When we're spending like that,
it's a domino effect.
Taxes.
Right.
So the property owner is passing that on to the renter. We did increase the rental deduction. So for people, this is important to know too, because a lot of folks, we've learned, aren't taking advantage of these benefits, including seniors, families, people with dependent children, and others who are in modest to low income bracket. We have these state tax credits that are either going to take, a significant amount off your tax bill that you owe the state, or if you don't owe a tax burden, and a lot of people don't, particularly those that are on fixed income, you still have to apply, submit your taxes, because you're eligible for these essential rebates. So if you are low to moderate income, if you have a dependent child, if you have the first one's the earned income tax credit, the senior circuit breaker tax credit for seniors. So we can help assist you for some of those benefits that will be eligible for this tax season in April at the state level, and for the rental assistance program, we can help connect you to that and work through that as well.
All right. Senator, let me grab this other call because we're running short on time, and I want to get Councilor Flynn. Good morning, caller. Welcome to the round table.
Yeah, how we doing?
Good. Well, we're not doing so well. I want to sugarcoat it.
Well, let me just say this, that in terms of Mayor Wu, the bottom line is that it's not personal. I don't dislike her, but
it's not personal. No, these are issue driven. This is not.
Well, the thing she doesn't take our community seriously, and there's a reason why. And so I'm calling in very quickly to say that you have to be able to show her that you're no nonsense in terms of how you deal with her. I'll give you an example in terms of the O'Brien High School. Now, what happened was that we contacted her office last year and said we wanted to have a meeting about not moving the O'Brien. And they said, well, we don't know if we could fit you in the schedule. So I said, we pulled a Deion Sanders on it. We said, look, we will be there on such and such date and such time, and we want to meet with her. So fortunately, I had about 20 people who congregated with me down there at City Hall, and we were told by her assistants that, oh, she's not available, she's not in the building. And I said, okay, we will wait. And I was talking to the group, and 15 minutes later, people were pointing behind me, and it was the mayor. We sat in a meeting with her and said, under those circumstances, do we want you to move that school, and gave the reasons why, boom, boom, boom. So what I'm saying is that the community has to put out the energy to show that, you know what, we're not putting up with this.
But that's
and
not what's happening.
Here very quickly that we can rally around.
Right, but I'm saying the fact, and I applaud you guys for what you did, but you said you took 20 people down there when it should have been 2,000 people down there.
Yeah, but all I'm saying, she didn't move that school.
No, I'm not saying.
So people need to show up.
We can rally around
that
she's resisting. And that's the issue around the library and Nubian Square. What it is that we've been in terms of the Nubian Square Coalition as a component of the Black Community Faith Center, we've been lobbying for 5 years to do that. What it is that the mayor has made a determination, who originally, when she was running for mayor, supported the Nubian name, is now against it.
This is what you get when you call City Hall now. That's the hail to the Queen.
Yeah, well, the bottom line is that she breathes just like us. And what I'm saying is that we need to rally around this library situation because she sees that as a challenge to her, quote-unquote, power by saying, we want that name. And so what I'm saying is that the mayor, what she has done is that we were misled by the trustee board of the library for a couple of years, giving the impression they could change the name. We were told only the Public Improvement Commission could do that. And so subsequently what has happened is that the mayor, if you notice, on June 23rd, said that the name will be the Shaw Roxbury Library. Now, the actual grouping, and maybe the councilor can speak on this, is that the Public Improvement Commission is the only power in the city. Of course, she controls that group. They voted on July 2nd to endorse what she said. So we feel in some respects it's illegal. But what I'm saying is that we need to let her know that, you know what, we want the Nubian Library name, which she doesn't want, and not just in terms of a symbolic act about the library, but to let her know that, you know what, you are not going to continue to bully our community, and we want that name without.
Well, let me let the councilor, because we're running against the clock here. Let me let the councilor Flynn weigh in on
thank
this.
you, Siddiqui, and respect you and your comments. I agree with you. I was always in support of the name, because that's the name the community really worked on and advocated for, along with I believe it was Kim Janey as well. At one time, city councilors also supported that, and then at the last minute there was some backdoor shenanigans, and so the city councilors refused to keep their position and keep and stay with the community and keep the current name, and they actually agreed to remain silent and not to get involved in it. I went on record, and I know Councilor Mejia did as well. I spoke to Diane Wilkerson about it, but that was a loss for the community, because that was negotiated with the community and it was changed at the last minute. And I thought it was a poor way to do business behind closed doors, and especially when you have an agreement. I do believe you should keep your word when you do have an agreement. And if you don't keep your word, it's a reflection of what's going to happen going forward, that your word really can't be counted on. And then my final point, Siddiqui, is I said this at the beginning of the meeting. The elected officials of color have to get more involved and engaged in standing up and speaking for the black community. They're the representatives of the black community.
Allegedly.
They need to provide the leadership. And sometimes when you're in government or in elective office, you get people that are upset with you, whether it's elected officials or others. But if you're elected, you need to do the job and represent your constituents. About the last thing I would want in a career is to be a puppet to anybody. I'd rather work full-time washing dishes than be a puppet to someone. But we do have a lot of people on the city council that do answer directly to the mayor, and it does hurt the black community. They're not standing up for the black community. Unfortunately, they still are receiving a lot of the votes from the black community, but I do think there has to be a meeting, a discussion led by the black community on how you move forward.
Yeah. Pastor Hobbs, you have some comments on this phone.
So Sister Michelle, who's on our main webpage, she says, first of all, how does she file for an abatement? And she also said she wished that these representatives, I guess being Senator Collins as well as Council represented Hyde Park, where she lives, and she said single families can't pass it on to anyone. We just have to find a way to pay it or lose our homes.
Yeah.
So I'm going to send you this link if you that Senator Collins has sent me for the abatement. And if you have her information, you can send this form to her. She can download it, or I'm not sure if you can do it online. I just sent it to you, so you can get that to her. The abatement there, but she's right. I didn't think about that. If you're a single family home, you can't pass that cost on.
Right.
You wanted to say something, Roach?
No.
Oh, okay. You play a little more music for us.
Larry,
Senator Collins, go ahead. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Senator.
people should know they can reach out to my office and we can assist people.
And what's
with their
that number
questions
again?
if they're looking to have some independent help, because the city,
What's that number
they're
again?
apprehensive helping people because they made the wrong call.
And what's that?
617
Yep.
722-1150. That's 617-722-1150. That's the Office of Senator Nick Collins, and we'll gladly help people, assist them through that process.
Yeah, and you will not hear "Hail to the Queen" when you call there. You actually get some help. This is why I have a very good relationship I've had over the years with Councilor Flynn's dad, the former mayor, where I have a good relationship with Senator Collins, because they help all their constituents. And, I see them reaching across and helping. A lot of times the senator and Councilor Flynn will call about issues that don't just affect their constituents, but can be helpful in our communities. And then it's an election year every year in the city of Boston, either at the state, local, or federal level. And yet people complain, but that's the time to voice your complaints and your concerns. If you don't want your taxes going up, we had that huge harbor over there. You have a cup of tea now, I'm going to dump it in my way out, right? And showing my opposition, where people can make their voice heard. Don't continue to be silent. And Councilor Flynn, it seems like the police must be down there all the time, because they remain silent. Like someone is down there, giving them the right to remain silent. Right. That is not their job. Cliff is hurting. He's saying he's having these conversations with his landlord about how, and her thing is, they did it to me, I got to pass it on to you.
Right. Now, I also want to add that I'm going to have a city council hearing on the assessment process in the city, and why some neighborhoods like Dorchester, Mattapan, Roxbury, South Boston have this huge increase, and why other neighborhoods have a significant decrease. Because when you have that huge increase, that impacts your property tax bill.
But also, Counselor, I think it needs to also be taken into consideration. Even if the neighborhood changes and someone just bought a home for $1 million, but if I bought my home at $100,000,
There you go.
I shouldn't be grouped in with
I
the
know.
$1 million person who knew when they were buying it that's what it was assessed at. But that's not what I get. It. There's increases, but this is like out of control.
Yeah, it is. And that building that went up next to you for $1 million, it does elevate your value of your house.
But I'm not selling.
But you're not selling, and it increases your property tax, and it forces you to make tough decisions when you need to pay this bill or that bill,
Right.
and you can't do both.
Right.
And I do want to add one other thing. If people want to reach me directly, I'm at 617-635-3203. If you want to give me a call up at City Hall, I'm always there, and my staff is always there. We'll return your phone call right away.
Cliff, before we let you go, any other comments or questions from these gentlemen who are here to help you? And we appreciate them coming and calling in, the senator and the city council. We've got a few minutes. We've got about 3 minutes. Anything else you want to add to?
Yeah, I'll say this: we need to start marching.
I told
Amen.
we need a no
We need to
Queens.
start
We need a no Queens Day, like we had a no Kings Day here in the city of Boston. This was not an inauguration; it was a coronation for the mayor the other day, and people were upset because everyone didn't get standing applaud. For what? For what? For what? What are we getting here?
Yep.
Thank you, Cliff.
Thank you.
Yeah, all right.
Thank you, Cliff.
Just
Thank
to
you.
piggyback on what Cliff just said, I can appreciate the complaints. I can appreciate the notion of marching, but I think more important and much more poignant response to this would be voting.
Hello.
Amen on that one.
Because I think what happens is that you don't strike the fear in the politician's heart when he looks out and see you complaining and chanting songs. But if he sees that same amount of people,
Right.
and the line is going around the corner,
That's right.
and after he had decided or she has decided to raise the taxes,
Right.
she can bet her last bottom dollar that those people are going to vote against
They
her.
have to be afraid of losing
They gotta
something,
be
just like
afraid
you're
of
afraid of
losing
losing
something.
your money.
Exactly. So I think we need to keep this issue.
Yeah.
We need to keep this issue on topic, keep it on surface.
Yeah.
Keep talking about it, so that when they're time to vote, that these people who are actually just blindly supporting her realize that their seats are in jeopardy.
Yeah.
Well, the
And
thing
that's
is,
when it's gonna be
the
a problem.
people also have amnesia. So the part that people are actually going out to march and vote, I think, will resonate in their minds.
Well, they
And,
can't
hey,
afford to have amnesia anymore. Health insurance is being canceled. Jamal, we got 30 seconds. We're going to give it to you. Go ahead, quickly.
I just want to remind everybody, meeting coming up
Oh,
next
that's right.
Saturday, January 17th, on the state of police reform in Boston. So that'll be at MAMLEO at 1 p.m.,
61
January 17th,
61
Saturday.
61
All
Columbia
elected
Road.
officials are invited, and top BPD brass, as well as the BPPA. And
what time again?
1 p.m. to 4 p.m., Saturday, January 17th at MAMLEO.
All right.
Okay.
We'll be
And
there.
I'm going to a community inauguration this afternoon for Reverend Culpepper. That's from 4
p.m.
to 7.
Yeah.
I'm taking my daughter. She's home from college, so we're going to go there for an hour or so. But I think the Reverend is doing an excellent job, and he's a gentleman, and I'm glad he's elected.
Larry, if I may, before you close out.
Yes, Senator, you got the last 30 seconds. Go ahead.
All right, I'll be quick. So a couple things. This week, people should reach out to their state senators across Boston. I think most of us are in the same position to support these tax relief proposals, but they'll be before us for a vote in the Senate on Thursday. So the sooner we act, the sooner we get that relief on its way. And that's Thursday. The other thing is you were talking about the property tax bills and these valuations. The city has known since June what these were and didn't disclose it to people.
Well, it was
And no
election.
one heard about a tax increase coming during the mayor's race,
Right.
if I recall.
Right.
So
That's by
it gets
design.
dropped on people in December
Right.
after the election, and I thought that was interesting timing. But Thursday we have that relief
Okay.
coming, so please be aware of that. And folks can call my office about the abatement or rental assistance. 617-722-1150.
All right. Thank you,
very much, for
Senator.
having me
Thank
on.
you. Thank you, Senator Collins. City Council Ed Flynn. Thank you, guys.
Thank
We
you,
definitely have to
Larry.
Make this a regular segment.
Thank
It's
you.
always
Great to be with you.
fun.
Great
All
to be
right.
with Senator Collins.
All right.
It was a great day.
All right.
Be blessed.
Thank you. Happy New Year.
Thanks.
Through the lies, you ain't living what you spitting. If your money's so long, while your dog's in prison. While your baby mom's stripping, while your mom's still living in that same broken home that you used to sell piffin'. You ain't gotta lie to me to sell me a track. You ain't gotta rock fake jewels or walk around strap. I respect artists getting money, but love them for spitting crack. And the fact that one track can move a family out the trap. It's a dream for us lost souls brought up in the mix. I'm motivated by the artists coming out in my midst. And the artists that paved the way when I didn't exist. Music's a skyscraper, I'm just trying to add a couple bricks.
This is for the dreamers. They say I am a dreamer. Cause I still believe that anything is possible as long as you work hard.
Hustle real hard, hustle real hard. Hustle real hard, hustle
so
real
if I never see ya, never get the chance to meet ya, know I came up from the bottom all